in a way, a bit of an urgent or last minute webinar that we put together this week, all about the lockdown grants that we're starting to see a lot of the state governments put out at the moment. And that's because I think the federal government had a good crack last year with JobKeeper and cash flow boost and that sort of thing. But because the lockdowns have been, at least initially, state specific, what am I trying to say here? The state governments have sort of taken over, given assistance, and I guess there's tons of confusion and last minute stuff. Everyone has their own approach, which is what it is. But I guess we're going to sort of run through each of the states throughout the webinar, and I'll actually go through the introduction slides, and we've got some other team members joining us, not just me and Riz. So I'll also mention as well, anyone who is attending who needs some help with accounting, whether it's relating to these grants or accountants letters for these grants, or actually just getting some decent help from an accountant, you are absolutely welcome to book in for a strategy call with one of our accounting team here at Inspire. Rose is actually going to post the link. Actually, Glaze did. She's just posted that link in the chat box to book a strategy call if you would like, and just to have a chat about how we might be able to help you. Also, we usually sort of mention the next webinar coming up in our current webinar, but we're actually hosting a Wealth for Life workshop. This is actually this Friday, Friday the 13th at 2 p.m. Queensland time, and that is a 3-hour workshop all about building wealth for your family. So if you haven't been to that one yet and you're a client, please, maybe Friday might not be the perfect timing, but please do check that out, especially if you are a client, to get that stuff sorted. Cool. All right. So the lockdown grants webinar, I will mention we have some lovely faces joining us in the background. Hey, everyone, if you could check your cameras on just briefly so other people can see you. Not all at once. Gushan, Karan, Jamie, Sakshi. Actually, we have had problems with people putting their cameras on, so maybe that is the problem. Hello.
Yeah, it's on you. You have to give us the permissions, Ben.
Oh no.
Yeah, we've been having problems this morning with cameras and stuff. I thought the camera just didn't like me, but I think we're unable to turn on those cameras there. But if everyone just wants to say introduce themselves and just say hi, maybe click. Oh, there you go. That's working.
I'm pressing the right buttons.
Yes, you are, Ben. Hey guys, my name is Gulshan, one of the accountants here. If you have any questions, I'll be answering them in the chat section.
Yeah. Hey guys, my name is Karan. I'm also one of the accountants at Inspire. Welcome everyone to this webinar this morning. If you have any questions, please pop in the chat box and we'll help you out. And
Karan is an absolute weapon at the New South Wales grants. So he's fantastic. Who else? We got Jamie. Hello.
Hey guys, Jamie here, another accountant here, ready for your questions, ready to help out. Just give us, just send your questions here and we'll try to answer them as quickly as possible.
Awesome.
And morning, everyone. Looking forward to seeing all your questions here. My name is Sakshi and I'll be assisting in the background and help answer them for you.
Wunderbar. Awesome. All righty. Well, and just to introduce the two people talking to you so far, it's Riz and Ben, or Rizal, if Riz is in trouble. But yeah, we're going to be the sort of co-hosting, and the team that you just met briefly was actually going to be operating in that chat box, and I'll be keeping half an eye on it as well. All righty. So what are we going to cover? We're actually going to cover these main states, and I hope that covers everyone. But I'm going to launch a poll to ask, where are you joining in from? So if you could just pop in, whether it's Queensland, New South Wales, Vic, ACT. We've got some WA, and I haven't got. I can actually get some information for people joining us from WA. Cool. If you could just let us know where you're dialing in from. All righty. So 62% in from Queensland, 28% from New South Wales, 8% from Victoria, and 3% or 1 from WA. Very cool. All right. And I will make sure I get some WA stuff up at the end. Please, someone remind me if I do forget. All righty. So really cool to see. All right. Well, we're going to start with our home state, Inspire's home state of Queensland. And we're just what we're going to do is just walk through one by one the current grants. And we're not going to cover every grant that's existed since COVID kicked off. But it's more so the recent ones, the ones that are focused on the lockdowns in July, August, to walk through those with you. And Riz, you know I like doing this. Would you like to kick off with our with our first grant?
Yeah, that's no issues at all. So yeah, as Ben mentioned, we're going to cover quite a few states there, but there are certain states that have a bit more information out right now. So Queensland is probably second in line or third maybe. New South Wales has the most, but I'm just going to run through this Queensland one right now. It's fairly new just because the lockdown period started only recently, unlike New South Wales where they've been, I think 6-7 weeks maybe coming up to 8. It's a bit insane. But the idea here is that they're introducing a $5,000 once-off payment to businesses, eligible businesses. Now, that's for businesses that are affected by the lockdown from Saturday, the 31st of July. So you might have remembered we had the Delta variant. I think we had 2 lockdowns now. On 31st of July, they introduced a lockdown recently, and that's the one that they've kind of released this one based on. So it opens mid-August, so we're expecting more information sometime this week, and then we're going to close. It's going to close in mid-November. There's what they're looking for is a 30% reduction in turnover, and people who might have been on JobKeeper before might be familiar with this, where usually they just compare a kind of prior periods to the current period that you were affected by the lockdown. Now, for you to be eligible as a business, you need to have a turnover of at least $75,000, but you also have to have payroll less than $10 million. So you can't be a massive multinational business, I guess. With massive payrolls. Now, when they first kind of released it, they did mention that it's to do with SEQ or South East Queensland that's impacted by the lockdown. But recently, they released more information about extending that to further North Queensland, just because you might have seen some cases flying around in Cairns and things like that that's come up. So they had to adjust a little bit of what they're going to make those grants available to. More importantly, they're really focusing on hospitality and the tourism sector. So if you're a big businesses in hospitality and tourism sector, and if you're in one of the 11 local government areas, you will be eligible for this grant. Obviously, you have to meet those eligibility criteria. So that there might be a lot of questions that comes through about the what do you call this? The downturn, the 30% downturn itself. And we're really basing a lot of it. We're kind of like watching New South Wales with a lot of the details that they've provided. But we're kind of seeing what they're doing, and they might apply that to Queensland. We're getting more information. Literally, this is the most up-to-date information we have right now. So you might pop in some questions there, and the team might be able to answer that. But do be patient with kind of try to get the information. We're kind of watching the news while we're on the phone with the clients as well, at the same time trying to give them updates there.
And maybe we can sort of share what we don't know as well. So we don't actually know what the 30% period relates to. We've got the guide that New South Wales did or has done, which we'll cover shortly, but it basically takes a 2-week window during the lockdown and compares that to a previous 2-week window. Again, there's very little information we know. We do actually expect a fair few businesses to be eligible for this one. And we'll kind of cover why when we cover New South Wales, because New South Wales has an exceptionally good set of grants at the moment. So, alrighty, I can see some questions coming in for this one. Stacey's asked, is it about the 75K turnover threshold and payroll in Queensland from Laura. Again, thanks team for answering those questions as we go. I might pull a couple up, but towards the end, but cool. So that is the Queensland Business Support Grants. Yeah, our whole team's sitting there refreshing the page every morning. So once we know some more info, we might get that out to anyone who is Queensland based that we know of. Cool. Now, just on Queensland stuff, there's other rumours. I feel like Queensland's just really slow to move on this stuff, but I've seen some stuff around waiving liquor licence fees and also additional help for hospitality and tourism industries. Again, like yet to see like black and white stuff at the moment on the Queensland front. So that is all about Queensland. Now, Felicity, we've got 2 minutes to run through New South Wales. I'm very sorry, but
that's okay. But I've mentioned to Felicity that I'll update her separately.
Yeah, wonderful. All right. So so in general, New South Wales is, in our opinion, pretty fantastic. We are expecting a huge amount of businesses to be eligible just because of how flexible the eligibility criteria is, especially around the 30% drop. So I'll kind of walk through there's two main grants. The JobSaver Grant is a recurring grant, and there's a once-off grant I'll cover second. But the JobSaver Grant, the purpose is to keep staff employed or the headcount in the business the same as it was on the 13th of July moving forward throughout the lockdown. So that's the purpose. The amount of the grant is 40% of weekly payroll. Now, they have changed a fair bit of this since they first released it, and I think they've only changed it in the last couple of days. Fantastic for us when we're trying to advise clients, but anyway. So 40% of weekly payroll, a minimum of $1.5 grand a week, up to a maximum of $100,000 a week. That's huge. That limit was 10K a week, but it's gone up to 100. For non-employing businesses such as sole traders, it's only $1,000 a week. So because there's technically no payroll to pay there, so it's okay. Now, how we work out what your weekly payroll is we've got to go back and have a look at the most recent BAS that was lodged before the 26th of July. And there's a way we work out the weekly payroll from that BAS. But we unfortunately can't go and look at what the payroll was the week before lockdown. It kind of doesn't work like that. So if you have hired people since your last BAS was lodged, and in most cases that will be the March BAS, then you may not be getting 40% of your current wages. It'll be 40% of what your wages were a few months ago when that BAS was lodged. It's backdated payments, then fortnightly from then on to cover costs incurred from week 4 of lockdown onwards, so 18th of July 2021 onwards. Applications are already open and they close currently on the 18th of October. The other thing I might mention here is that it currently closes on the 18th of October, I'm guessing, if lockdowns aren't extended. So again, the further we go into these lockdowns and government required shutting out our businesses, the more assistance that we are seeing in most cases. So so we do expect if things continue to be extended in the lockdown side of things, then the grants should also be continued. Don't quote me on that, but that's what we have seen and do expect. Now, the eligibility on the JobSaver Grant is the ABN should be registered in New South Wales. But if the ABN isn't, so if you've got a Queensland headquarters, as an example, but you still operate in New South Wales, then you just need to provide evidence for that. So whether it's a signed lease or some sort of evidence that you have an operation in New South Wales. A revenue decline of 30% or more over a minimum 2-week period between 26th of June to 28th of August. That's a huge window. The window's changed about 3 times, but that's a huge window now. I've got an asterisk there because it can change again, if we get extended. And we compare that same 2-week window with a period in 2019 or 2020 or 2 weeks prior to lockdown. So the 12th of June to the 25th of June, 2021. So it's very broad there. We've got a few different cracks at it, which means, when we get the ruler out to measure the numbers or the decline in turnover here, we're going, all right, this 2 weeks, and then we move forward a date. to, let's say the 29th, sorry, I'll make it easy for myself. The 1st to the 14th, we look at what that turnover decline has been. Then we go the 2nd to the 15th, and then the 3rd to the 16th, and then the 4th to the 17th. It's pretty crazy calcs just to make sure we get the maximum decline in turnover, and that's more relevant for the second grant I'll cover. But there's just, like, it may seem simple on the surface of, oh yeah, 30% decline or more, but when you're trying to work out how to get the maximum return here for a client, it is actually quite complex. But the great news is we've got lots to compare it to. The bad news is that just takes ages to work out. Anyway, this is a massive grant though. If you've got a weekly payroll of 20 grand a week, you've probably got a couple of $1 million of turnover, then this is like, 40% of 20 grand is a decent amount. That's going to massively help your business cash flow out. And again, just remember, like JobKeeper was, you don't need a 30% reduction for the whole term of the JobKeeper or the JobSaver Grant. You just need to have had a 30% drop in a 2-week comparable period. So we've seen clients where they've been ineligible apart from 2 windows, two days of windows, but they still tick the box here, and we're able to apply for the grant here. So it is, please don't write yourself off that you're not going to be eligible for any of these grants. It's a matter of working out, and again, like there's really complex calculations for this stuff, or when we look at your zero file, if you use zero, quite complex ways that we make sure you get the most out of it. All right, turnover between 75k and 250 mil for the 2020 financial year. Now that range was 75 to 50 mil. It's gone up to 250 mil. There's a huge range. You must maintain headcount at 13 July. We've had a few questions here. If you fire someone or basically make them redundant, that doesn't, you're dropping your headcount. So you're not maintaining your headcount. If they make a resignation voluntarily, that does not affect your eligibility here. That's something in essence you can't control. So they're being reasonable about that one. But yeah, if you go and make half your team redundant, you are not maintaining your headcount. For non-employing businesses, the business receiving the payments must be the primary income source for the person. So if you're a sole trader, that one's relevant there. Employees can receive Commonwealth COVID-19 disaster payments if their employer is receiving JobSaver. So that's a good thing to know for your team members to go and suss out their own grants here.
And just to jump on that, like that was something that was interesting previously, where you couldn't double dip in a sense, where if you lost if you lost your job, you couldn't get JobKeeper and I can't remember the names now, JobKeeper and I can't remember the other one. Anyways, you couldn't double dip. But the instance here right now is Commonwealth. The disaster payment is run by the Department of Human Services, or Centrelink, as people commonly know it. So an employee can go and get help from the federal government. At the same time, your employer might be getting help from the New South Wales government. So that's what it's saying there.
Cool. Now,
thank you, Ivan.
Awesome, Chelsea. Cool. Now I've got a underlined dot point there at the bottom. It says still potential eligibility. So even though you might not fall exactly within these eligibility questions or conditions, New South Wales Service New South Wales has said, please reach out to us, please contact us. Now, what that practically looks like is waiting 2 to 3 hours on hold with them to have a chat to someone about, which box you fall short in and what they can do about them. So what we've seen though is they've been relatively generous with this stuff and are applying common sense. So yeah, if you're 29.5% downturned, it may be it may be that you could be eligible for some of this stuff still. So it's just it's almost like a case by case basis from that point onwards. All right, so that's the JobSaver grant. Now, Riz, would you like to take us through the business grant once-off grant?
Oh, cool. So we're still in New South Wales. If anyone's noticing, there's a little map on the right if you're wondering where we are. So we're still in New South Wales right now. There's another grant called the once-off business grant. It really is just a once-off payment of different kind of tiers that they have. And the reason for those different tiers is it depends on your turnover. So if you decline, your decline is between 30 to 49%, you're going to get a once-off payment of 7.5K, and 10.5 for 50 to 69, and 15K if 70 or more. And to be eligible for this, Ben, you want to do the next slide, please? Thank you.
It's actually quite similar to the previous one we looked at.
Yeah, it's not too far off. So your business needs to have a wage of 10 million or less. So very similar, turnover between 75K and 50 million. So the other one, they increased it to 250. So not the big business won't get it, but likely, you know, if you're a small business, you're going to get this grant, and your ABN should be registered in New South Wales, or you need other supporting documentation to show that you run a business in New South Wales, like Ben mentioned, lease agreements and things like that. Revenue decline of 30% or more over minimum 2-week period between 26th of June to 17th of July, compared with same period in the last kind of financial year or the year before, or the 2 weeks period prior to lockdown. So this is similar to the JobSaver grant as well. Now, just kind of want to add to the point Ben mentioned there about you still could be potentially eligible if you have kind of little minor nuances about your businesses that it wasn't very, very clear whether you'll be eligible or not. This is how we found out about it. Our team actually spent 2-3 hours at the end of a day to just kind of stay on the phone with specific questions like that. And what we're seeing is, like Ben mentioned, they're trying to work with us as best as possible. So between, you know, if you genuinely have a reduction in turnover, I mean, let's be pragmatic about this. If your business really got hit hard because of the lockdown, I urge you guys to actually go and reach out to New South Wales, Service New South Wales, and try to get this grant, both of them, JobSaver Business Grant as well. And the reason why that's kind of like, compared to the 2019 period or the 2020 period, or even just 2 weeks prior to the lockdown, they're trying to kind of, you know, give you as much room here for those little nuances to make sure that you can get that grant. Cool. So it's the same. You have to maintain headcount, and worth mentioning is, well, maintaining headcount doesn't necessarily mean that you know, like Ben mentioned, if they quit, that's on them. But if you fire them, then it's different. The idea here is they're trying to save jobs, keep people employed, similar to the job keeper in the past, where they're trying to keep your team staying with you during the lockdown. So you might be on furlough or being stood down, your hours might drop, but your headcount is still the same, then you're fine. So I saw some people say, well, you know, I don't have any work. Why do I need to keep? Well, you can still keep them in the business. It's just the idea is they don't want you to detach from your employees during this time, and to keep them kind of employed, so to speak. So yeah, maintain your headcount as at 13th of July. And for non-employing business, it's very similar. If it's the primary source for them, then you can get this business grant. So if it's someone who's a sole trader, for instance, a solo hero, I like to call, they work for themselves and they're the only one in the team. If it's their primary source, they can get this grant as well. So very, very similar to the previous one.
Cool. And I think what that's also addressing is if you've got 3 businesses in 3 different companies, then you can only get it once for that primary source as well. So that is that one there. Now, we've seen in a bit of a chat, and also a little bit of a sentiment that the sole traders are getting forgotten about in a lot of the states. I guess a lot of this is focused, all the grants are to keep people employed, and what I mean by sole traders without team members. But New South Wales does have a grant that is specifically designed for sole traders or the smaller businesses. They call it micro business to help with them as well. So it's fortnightly payments of $1,500. That's $750 a week to cover business expenses. It's for businesses with turnover between 30K and 75K for 2020. Revenue decline of 30% or more. So this is very similar to the previous ones we've looked at, as in the last two, the JobSaver and the once-off payment. So you need to show that 30% or more decline. They've got to have business costs for which there is no other government support. So if they've waived your liquor license, we can't use it for that. But I'm sure there's heaps of business expenses that there is no government support for. So that should be easy to sort out. Need to maintain headcount if you are in an employing business. Otherwise, it needs to be the main source of income for that sole trader or the associated person if you use another structure. So that is the micro one. Now, I did add on the end, there's a few more bits and pieces of support for New South Wales, which we're not going to go into huge detail given it's a pretty limited scope of people who these are eligible for, but accommodation providers like hotels, motels have their own little thing going, and also payroll tax deferrals in New South Wales. So I've seen some better payroll tax concessions in other states than compared to New South Wales, but you do get deferral, so you can wait to pay those amounts if you are hitting that payroll tax limit and get penalised from hiring Australian employees, which, yeah, there's my little rant on payroll tax. But anyway, it's it's one of those things that it is what it is. All righty.
There's so many other little things here. Like they're really trying to help here. There's things like land tax concessions, you know, and there's other non kind of quantitative or funding help as well. They've got a short-term eviction moratorium to make sure that you don't get kicked out of your home if you can't pay your rent and things like that. There's quite a bit on the Service New South Wales website if you guys want to check out all that stuff there. I recommend if you're really getting hit hard, really hard by this, and you need every single help possible, dive into that website, go through it. This is some serious help there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. All righty. So that's basically ending our talk through New South Wales. And the next state we're going to be on to is Victoria. All righty. So we've actually only got one slide for the Victorians. There's and that's because the complexity of Victorians' rules, it almost, some of these grants rely on eligibility for previous payments as well. So I might just go through in sort of dot point, not in detail, some of the key ones that we've seen. But we've seen the first one is commercial tenancy relief. So rent relief matching the turnover. For what that means is there's a requirement of commercial landlords to drop the rent in the same proportion that business's turnover has dropped. So there's almost like laws to enforce that. It used to be in the first round of this time last year, it was almost about mediation of the landlord and the tenant, but this is almost like forcing the landlord to drop the rent, which a bit bad if you are a landlord there, but that's one of the things that you need to keep in mind. Federal COVID-19 disaster payments. These are really small amounts. They're administered through Centrelink. There's another name for that, Service Australia, or
they've changed it a few times.
Yeah,
I think Services Australia. Yeah.
Yep. But that's administered through there. There's different amounts whether you're receiving certain support payments already or not. But that one's a federal disaster payment. There's a $4,800 payment for July lockdown, not yet announced for the August one. But this is industry specific as well. So yeah, that's almost 5K, similar to the Queensland grant. Cool. And then we've got the Business Cost Assistance Program Round 3. So there's big names, big tongue twisters for our Victorian friends. But Round 3 is $2,800 automatically paid to those who are eligible in mid-August. Again, this is an extension of, and you see this is Round 3, it's an extension of the Business Cost Assistance Program Round 2. All righty.
And there's one more as well, the Small Business COVID Hardship Fund.
Yep.
And that's recently started. So what basically, if they're not eligible for existing programs or experience at least 70% reduction in turnover, and have payroll of up to $10 million. Recently, on 6th of August, it was announced that additional funding will be added to this Small Business COVID Hardship Fund, allowing grants of up to $8,000. Now, the difference with kind of what we're seeing with New South Wales and kind of Queens and Victoria is kind of doing it in bits and pieces and kind of adding things as they go along. So there's no long running, even the business cost assistance program, this is the third round. What they're doing is they're kind of watching it as it goes along, and because Victoria has gone through quite a few lockdowns. Unfortunately, it's really we really feel for the Victorian people we have here, and they've recently announced that Small Business COVID Hardship Fund. So have a look at that as well. But I recommend definitely jumping on their website or signing up for their updates, because there is a place where you can get more information on this stuff as well.
Yep. And just a reminder, I think, Riz, you mentioned it, but it was a 70% or more reduction in turnover for that $8,000
yes.
grant. And then, just like the other states, there's more stuff like there's licensed hospitality venue payments, there's Alpine Business Support Fund. What else? We've got commercial, we've talked about the commercial tenancy relief. There's a Victorian event support. So if you've got a live event that got cancelled, I think there's between grants of $2,000 to $25,000. Micro business concierge. Cool. So that
and awesome, Mike. And that's worth mentioning as well. If you're a micro business and you need a bit more help, and you don't have an accountant to go to for this stuff, the first port of call is definitely go to your accountant or get in touch with us, and we'll be able to kind of look at the spread of help that you might be eligible for, and just go through that list with you. But if it's like too much and you don't have an accountant and you can't do it yourself, in Victoria there is a micro business concierge that you can get in touch with. It's basically someone who will help you with some of this stuff, and that's run by the Victorian government itself. So and that's all. That information is on their website, and like I think Mike just mentioned that he has a call today at 10:30 a.m. That's awesome. That's the stuff that you can do. If you are on the micro side of things, you need support from the government, they can help you guide through some of that stuff as well for Victoria.
Wonderful. All righty. So that is the Victorian side of things. Now we're going to move on to the South Australian side, which is very, very fresh off the press. I think that was this morning it's been released. So we've just had a brief read of what they've discussed and note down these points here. So what we've got is, it's actually a relatively small grant compared, but a $3,000 grant for businesses who employ others, $1,000 for non-employing or sole traders. It requires a 30% or more decline as a result of restrictions in the week commencing 20th of July 2021 versus the prior week. So this is a little bit more restrictive than the New South Wales eligibility grants. So where you had a 2-week period and you can compare it to a lot of different periods, this is like the week just before the lockdown versus the week after. So pretty short window there. 75K or more in turnover and GST registered is the requirement. Payroll under 10 mil in the 2020 financial year. Applications are open now, but they close at the end of September. And there's additional industry-specific grants available for businesses that still have restrictions after 28th of July. So, if you're a business that still has ongoing restrictions, you may be eligible for more in South Australia. Now, in SA as well, there's a $25K grant for cancelled major events. waivers, reductions, and deferrals of payroll tax. I think South Australia has been the most progressive in payroll tax. It's one of my own personal most hated taxes because it penalises employers for hiring Aussies. It just does not make sense to me. But South Australia's done a great job of getting rid of a fair bit of it. And they're also another state to introduce liquor license fee waivers as well. So if you're in any of the industries that might be relevant for. All righty. Now I can still see plenty of questions coming through, but that is the end of the planned grant updates that we spoke about. Just a reminder as well, if you do want to talk further with one of our accounting team about these grants or just your business's accounting in general, please feel free to book a strategy call in with our accounting team. I'm pretty sure there should be availability, usually same day or next day at the latest, to be able to have a chat with one of our team. And yeah, if you just put in where you're based and the grant that you want to sort of discuss more about when you book that in, that'd be fantastic. Grant, Glaze or Rose, if we could just grab that link again in the chat box. But we're going to shift over to Q&A. There has been tons of Q&A so far that I can see coming in, and our team have been doing a great job at answering that. But yeah, we're basically open for more Q&A.
And while we get more questions coming through, this is an ever evolving situation as it is with COVID and the lockdowns. So we really appreciate all the questions that you guys do add into the chat box, because ultimately that gives us an understanding of actually because once a new grant comes out or something new comes out from the government, there's usually teething issues that they didn't predict or no one ever predicted that you might be experiencing. So those questions are super important. Now, if we might not be able to answer all of them right now because even the government doesn't have the answers yet, we might do like a 2.0 version of the webinar or send out some FAQs to help you guys out. But get in touch with us because there is a wealth of knowledge that we can share with some of this stuff we've gone through with the existing clients that have applied for some of this grants as well. But yeah, I do recommend asking us those questions. And maybe in the 2.0 version, we might add WNT as well, if we have time, or if you want to do that right now.
No, I will do that right now, actually.
Cool.
So I'm kind of reading this on the fly, by the way, but for WA, Small Business Lockdown Assistance Grant Round 2, applications close the end of August for this one. But the eligible businesses may be entitled to a $3,000 grant, where, among other eligibility criteria, they have a turnover of at least 75K, register for GST, an Australia-wide payroll of less than 4 mil. Why has everyone got different amounts for this? And suffered a defined financial loss of 30% turnover reduction as a result of the lockdown period. So that's the WA one. So it's just a 3K grant for businesses there. And I didn't see anyone tick the box for Northern Territory. But there is a handful of grants for Northern Territory as well.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely help out there. So I just want to kind of bring it back to the center here. The reason you're here is probably, you've been affected by the lockdowns, or you know someone who has been affected by the lockdown, and you want to be a bit of the central point of knowledge for that, and you want to share that around. I definitely suggest that you reach out to anyone for help, whether it's the state government, concierge calls, or your accountant, or us, or even other business owners, because it is tough, especially if you've been extended lockdown and you've been seeing that kind of bank account kind of dropping and you don't know how to pay your bills. It is a stressful time. I just want to make sure that you guys are supported as much as possible. So there is help out there. Give them a call, have a chat to them, have a chat to your advisors, have a chat to us. We'll be able to help. The other thing that's worth mentioning as well, something that we did previously when JobKeeper and JobSeeker, that whole in March 2020 came out, we helped quite a lot of clients through what we call an emergency assistance meeting. And this was literally what the name says. It's an emergency meeting that we catch up with you and sit down with you and run you through what your cash flow looks like as well. And we did this for our existing clients just because we have a bit of knowledge with how their cash flow and business is flowing anyways. But if you do need some sort of help to plan your cash flow going forward, that's not something that we can't do as well. But even if it's not us, I definitely suggest looking through your cash flow. Now, all this grants, all this help, yep, it's great, but it's all about, protecting your buffer right now. So if you got your doors shut and money's not coming through the door, if you've got $20,000-$30,000 sitting, for a rainy day fund, or it was supposed to pay this bill, that bill, you really need to treat every dollar very, very carefully. And I think that's super, super important. If it's going to be extended, you got to have a plan for that. And yeah, if you guys need help for that stuff as well, reach out to us, reach out to your advisors, and make sure that you have a plan in place to make sure you can make it to the other side of this small little lockdowns that we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, no, that's it. Alrighty. Hey, Riz, did you want to have a crack at maybe one of those questions in the Q&A box? I'm just keep an eye on the chat box as well. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, here to help, mate. Also, thanks, Bao. Yeah, Bao asked, she's got some contractors to her business or subcontractors. They would actually be considered their own business for the purpose of these grants. So they'd have to consider their own circumstances there.
I don't know what's happening today, man. The technology doesn't like me. I can't access that Q&A box.
Oh, Riz.
Something is happening with me.
And your profile picture is Rose's profile picture. So.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot hapening today.
Wow. Oh, she would have logged you in. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's
cool. Hey, team who are still connected, could someone have a look into Chris's question around staff temporarily stood down? Oh, Jamie's onto it. Cool. Just reading as we go. And Lloyd, we might get some personal help for you, given you're a client, mate. We'll get in touch on some stuff specific to you in Victoria. Thanks, Lloyd. Cool. Yeah. I think that's. We'll keep answering those questions in the Q&A box. I'll just get the team to do some research on them because I can't find some of those answers really quickly. But that is about it for the webinar so far. Again, if you still want to stay around for the next 10 minutes and ask some more questions, we can do that. But we might wrap up the formal part there. Just a reminder, we do have a workshop this Friday, Wealth for Life, where we talk about how we our philosophies around building your family's wealth. But that is it for